Hey there everybody, future voice actor here again. Last week we delved into the outer layers of my comics mythos of the Jones sisters, featuring the tragic story of Ariella, Bella, and Nicole Jones and their rise to panhood. But that's barely scratching the surface. In the 3+ years I built up the mythos and background of this continuity, there's a lot of bulk to go through, so that's why I'm posting these videos. And so I hope that they will come to mean something positive to you as well. And speaking of positivity, today I thought I'd tell you about a phenomenon that is a recurring and astounding plot element, and it ties very deeply into the other prominent family in all my Jones sister stories, the Schucarts, who have an uncanny, magnetic love for the Jones girls, and vice versa. Welcome to episode 2 of the Nevertomes. Flute Materialize! When the Jones Sisters was in its infancy as minor characters in my other comic strip, Random Minds, I had a hard time finding the proper outline for the genre. The only constant was the dashing and daring Ariella Jones pursuing her quest for her true love. In the scrap pilot, this was done by Ariella putting on a blonde wig and blue dress so as to look like Big Sister Bella and scrounge around Nimoy Park for boys. One boy in particular caught her interest, but to her dismay, he revealed that he was curious about her little sister. Naturally, this was met with explosive results. The next day at Nimoy, that same boy came back and Ariella tore into him and told him to get lost. Now here's the clincher. The boy had mistaken R.A.J. for Bella, and he wasn't asking about the underage Nicole. He was asking about Ariella herself. The boy would be revealed to be the little brother of Bella's BFF, Sophie, Jesse Schucart. Sadly, this storyline lacked substance, and the drawings were far too crude, so it was scrapped. But the plot was later re-explored and relaunched. Now, before we touch on the actual canon story itself, let's get better acquainted with the Schucarts. Sophie, age 25, and Jesse, age 21, both the son and daughter of Bob and Sherry and the younger siblings of Sandy Schucart. Sophie is a typical girl next door who is dedicated to fitness and health, having been best friends with Isabella Ray Christina Jones since their first day of kindergarten at Serene Plains Elementary. Sophie's demeanor was always happy, albeit shy and withdrawn. One thing that sets Sophie's fires ablazing is being a big sister, and not just to Jesse. Sophie has, from the very beginning, taken on Bella's little sisters as her own, and like Jesse, Nicole and Ariella, Ari, as she is referred to by Sophie, all go gaga over the doting and compassionate, not to mention beautiful young Schucart girl, whom they've all affectionately dubbed Sofcart. Jesse is a voice actor for one of Remington Springs' main radio stations. His voice talents were his area of interest ever since he was a little boy, idolizing such VOAs as among others. If you see a connection between Jesse and myself, you're right on the money. Jesse and I are indeed the same person. The key differences are that sadly, I don't have a sister, and even sadder, as of this video, I don't have my true love. Not yet anyway. Millennium's still young, but I digress. Like Ariella, Jesse was born in the month of June, 2 weeks after her actually, and also has Asperger's syndrome. Jesse and Sophie are an inseparable pair, and can't stand to be apart from each other. Jesse idolizes Sophie, even more so than he does his voiceover heroes. And what reasons wouldn't he? Sure, maybe the first week of his life, Sophie may have outright avoided him, not wanting to be his sister, but one look into his eyes and the happy coo he gave her, that all went the way of the 8-track tape, barring you history buffs out there, just for good measure. At present, Jesse and Ariella are engaged to be married, and the same with Bella and Sophie. But how'd this all come about? Like all things in life worth having, through time and adversity. Let's start with Sophie's relationship with Bella. Before we go any further, I must emphasize this video is not for children and contains pro-LGBTQ support unapologetically. When they were in 5th grade, Sophie tagged along with Bella to an all-girl unsupervised party at a neighbor's house. The most popular girl in school and her cousin were the hosts. Sophie was met with typical in-crowd attitudes towards outsiders, but Bella wasn't having it. Despite all the protests of the other 5th and 6th graders, Bella stuck by Sophie steadfastly, rebuffing the popular girls. The host of the party, it turned out, was a girl that Bella and Sophie had tutored the year prior, allowing her to move on to middle school. This changed the other girls' attitudes, especially the cousin who berated Sophie. The party continued in the basement where a game of spin the bottle was about to go on. The host had cut out and enlarged pictures of cute boys from magazines and yearbooks and gave them to half the girls. When it was Sophie's turn, the bottle landed between her and Bella, neither of whom had a mask. The host judged this a legal play, and Sophie and Bella had to kiss. It was right then and there Sophie realized realized how deeply her feelings for Bella actually went, and got a little too into the kiss. Sophie just explained that she was imagining kissing General Hospital's Steve Burton, but Bella's empathy powers told her a completely different story. In the Mythos story, The Repurification of Sophie's Soul, as seen on the home site, it talks more about the aftermath of the following incident in detail. After Bella was in her accident and comatose at ApeGen, two major things happened. Jessie had tried to comfort Sophie by cuddling up with her in her bed, but realizing that Jessie's body was reacting to this involuntarily, Sophie went against her instincts and verbally lashed out at him to get him to leave, trying to instill fear in him. But in reality, Sophie had wanted her little brother's affection, but not at the cost of his well-being in the future. For weeks, Jessie thought he had hurt his sister in some way and avoided her and didn't speak to her. After Bella's near-death injury, that was Sophie's second cataclysm. The third was when after Sophie and Bella's teacher and coach, Esther Jones, helped Sophie after being targeted by bullies who were bigoted against Sophie's bisexuality. These same bullies had targeted the coach with hate mail because of her own homosexuality. Upon learning this and that Bella was Esther's niece, Sophie's affections were rerouted towards the Jones aunt who had come to her rescue. This would further come to head when Sophie asked the mid-20s coach if she was single. Esther's pantuition had mistaken Sophie's feelings for her as a crush and decided she didn't need to know about her wife Jillian. This, however, would come back to bite the both of them hard on Valentine's Eve when Esther received a note from Sophie and a hotel key declaring herself to be Esther's love slave. Needless to say, Sophie was stood up. Esther could not show her face at that hotel to even try to talk Sophie down, not without any possible outside ramifications. Sophie called Esther's apartment and Jillian was asked by Esther to pick up after being briefed on what happened. Again, the full story can be found on the blog site. The Schucarts have connections deep into the Joneses' world, including a mutual great-great-great-grandparent, making them distantly related, which upon learning this, shocked both Ariella and Jessie to their cores. However, this was not even a remotely good enough reason to even think about considering breaking up as far as anyone was concerned. The Schucarts and Joneses also share another link, as told in the Petra Pan saga. We'll put that on hold for right now. As hard as it is to fathom, there would come a time, as chronicled in the Jones sisters' mythos story, The Unthinkable, Sophie and Jessie had their first ever down and dirty, bitterly heated, and angry clash. It went so far as Sophie literally dislocating Jessie's shoulder. Feelings had festered from the last 8 years regarding the event previously mentioned in this video, when Sophie attacked 13-year-old Jessie in a facade of anger to teach him a tough but important life lesson. It would take the combined efforts of Bella and Ariella each to determine the cause of the linked problem, which is not what you probably think it is. Now, talking about that story and the Petra Pan saga will eventually open the door to the introduction of the teen girl Lexi, who is a newer main character. Since you will encounter her in the mythos, I will briefly touch upon the origins of this particular Schucart. Alexandriella Thea Michaela Jones-Card is in reality the future daughter of Ariella and Jessie, from 400 years after the present day. Though inspired partially by Chibiusa in Sailor Moon, the biologically 16-year-old girl strongly and vastly adores both her mother and father, not to mention her extended blended family. But we'll go over Lexi's entry in the Nevertomes at a later time, no pun intended. Personality-wise, Sophie is also a mother hen, a trait she shares with her longtime best friend slash distant cousin slash fiance Bella. It was in high school during Bella's coma that Sophie learned to channel her feelings into exercising and went into the field of physical fitness and therapy. In a now deemed illegal act by her former employer, Sophie was fired from the seedy West's Gym by the secondary manager for a relationship with a female client. To counter this blatant act of bigotry, Schucart elder brother Sandy teamed up with their grandmother, the operations chief executive at ApeGen, to get her a job as a personal trainer slash therapist, at Sophie's own reluctance, however. West would eventually close down, and the manager was rightfully ostracized. Jesse is one of those guys who believes that you only have one true love in this world, and Ariella has been it, for much longer than he actually realizes. Jess is attracted to Ariella for her many quirks, her optimism, her openness with her feelings, the way she looks at him, her freckles, and her all-out Peter Pan-esque tomboyishness. Jess always wanted to be a big brother or uncle, and now at the present time he technically is both, with Jones girls Serena, Nicole, and Magda, along with their friends, looking to the young Schucart as a big brother, and he is also the uncle to Sandy's son. Jess can't stand to see other people fight, and even with his newly acquired pan power, he struggles inside with using it, one time almost giving into blind rage against a young man who insulted one of Jesse's cousins. While mostly insecure about himself, Jesse knows that he has the love of his soulmate and her family. Like Ariella, Jess is a deep fan of Peter Pan, including the Broadway versions, although sometimes Jess is unable to see past the actresses playing Peter as being girls. At Camp Hawthorne, it was this trait that stoked Jesse's flames, and he fell in love with Ariella all over again when she played the title role. As touched upon in episode 1 of the Nevertomes, Jess had fallen for AJ in 2nd grade, but due to their being too close at that age, he was wiped of his memories by Esther Jones, and he was pulled out and homeschooled by his parents.